This is just my favorite filter, and you can't stop me from using it. So there. So there. Hi, Darren. Hi, guys. Welcome on. This is very exciting. I'm just waiting for my friend Peter to jump on, and we are going to be talking about how to stay sane when you are on quarantine, lockdown, social distancing, whatever you want to call it. Whatever you may want to call it. We're going to be talking about how we stay sane during this time. Peter's really amazing when he jumps on. We will be talking about what he does, why we're friends, how we met, because it's a good story, and all those good things. So I am just waiting for him to, there we go, look at that. Beautiful. All right, friends. Hi, Peter.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Great.
Give me 1 second. I just realized, if I go off the screen, maybe it'll close. Maybe it won't. Okay, I'm not going to do anything. Just going to not touch anything.
Okay.
Like a professional. Okay, so everyone, this is my friend Peter. Peter, tell us what you do, because the best thing about this is you're like the most unexpected looking person I've ever had on Instagram live with me. People would not be expecting us to go live together just if they saw a photo of you and us next to each other. So what's your deal? Tell us about your deal.
Yeah, it certainly is a Beauty and the Beast scenario at the moment.
Not at all.
It is indeed. I'm a behavioral economist. I'm a professor, and I'm a humor researcher. So I direct the Humor Research Lab at the University of Colorado. And I'm living in Los Angeles right now, maybe about a mile and a half from Gala, I would say. And but we see each other in between at equinox on occasion.
It's true, we do.
It's true, on occasion. With her working out much harder than me, I would say.
Hardly. So, do you want to tell the story of how we met so that people understand how we even came into contact with each other?
Yeah, actually, so this will be a surprise to everyone. That Gala and I actually met online, and had a really lovely meal in which the conversation was quite compelling, super interesting, way better than the food.
Yes.
And then at the end, and I actually gave her a ride home, which means at least that I'm not a creep. And then after she closed the door, went into her place, and I drove home. I got home, and I got a very nice text message that basically said, "You seem like you're a very interesting man. I enjoyed our conversation. I don't think we're a match, but I would like to stay in touch with you."
Yes.
And I said, "Yes, of course."
So it was a little bit more than that. I remember texting you this, and I said to you, I don't often say this because I like to mean what I say, but I would actually like us to be friends. And you said, "Don't worry, I'm not offended that you don't want to have sex with me." And I laughed so hard. And then you said, "You're the kind of person I moved to Los Angeles to meet. I would love that." And we actually have become friends since then. And I think you're such a fascinating person. I always learn something when I hang out with you. So life is amazing in that way.
Here we are. And so then the other reason that I think that Gala and I are a good match as friends is that I think we're looking at the world in a very similar way these days. And so I'm a longtime bachelor. I've never been married. I have no children. I have no interest in children. And I have recently launched a podcast called Solo, The Single Person's Guide to a Remarkable Life. And of course, Gala is, unless something has happened since that date, she is solo. And those of you who know her know that she is living a remarkable life. Like, she is the poster child for a remarkable life. And so we have been talking about having her on as a guest, and then we got talking about doing the Sequestered special. And putting something up live and recording it and trying to do something designed to help the world, you know. And the way I've sort of thought about this is there something that we can do in terms of inspiring people? Just have people have a little bit of a better, oh, we're getting such nice notes from people.
See, that's why Instagram Live is so great. It's like a full-on fandom, and people are so nice.
Yes. So maybe if we could, I know everybody, I know that like 99% of the people watching are friends of Gala, and 1% are my friends, which is probably the ratio of Instagram followers that we have. if it's okay with you, Gala, let me do the intro to Solo.
Sure.
And then we can just get started.
Yeah,
okay?
let's do it. Absolutely.
We're gonna tape this and put this on the podcast. So here we go. Ready? Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Gala Darling. Gala is a speaker and best-selling author of Radical Self-Love. She's a friend of mine, an inspiration, and currently thriving during the Corona pandemic. Welcome, Gala.
Thank you for having me. I'm really thrilled to be on the Solo podcast because that shit is good.
You're very kind. I have to tell you this. I've done this as sort of an MVP, as a minimum viable product. And so I've put it out there into the world with almost no promotion. I'm good at making things. I'm bad at promoting things. And it's just catching fire. There's really, if you look at like singles related podcasts out there, they're all, this is what's wrong with you, this is how not to be single, rather than saying, whether it be for now or forever, how can you take this time in life to make something great?
Absolutely. My friend was just posting some stuff. Her name's Susanna. She was posting on her Instagram the other day about this book called Wife Work, which is about the division of labor when couples get married, or heterosexual couples get married, and the rate at which women do housework, emotional labor, blah, blah, blah. And she said, if anyone reads this, they will never want to get married, ever.
Yeah. It's often referred to as nowadays the second shift. A woman goes to the office and then she comes home and the lion's share of the cooking, the cleaning, the caregiving falls on her shoulders.
Absolutely. And I think, some of it is, I'm not domestic at all, but when I lived with men, I would find that my standard of living was so much higher than theirs that if I didn't do it, they wouldn't do it because they don't care. Like, a lot of men can happily live in squalor and seem to not even notice, whereas I would fucking die.
I want to defend at least one man. If you look into the background, I have a very tidy house.
It does look clean. But you seem like you have your shit together. Maybe I just have been dating projects for too long.
Well, yeah, I think the thing about this is, the way I think about Solo and I think about marriage and so on, is that it's just overprescribed. That is, if 86% of people do it, it's probably too many people to be doing it. And so for some people, I think giving them an alternative perspective, at the very least, the time that they are unpartnered, that they see as an opportunity is important.
Right.
Now, of course, I think one of the, and by the way, this is not a trivial number of people. So 28% of households in the United States are inhabited by one person.
It's a lot, actually.
It's a lot. And so when we think about what's happening with being, what is it called, safer at home, is that now there's a lot of people who are used to living alone, but are also actually used to being super connected in the world. So in the second episode of Solo, I had a behavioral scientist who does research on single living, and she finds that solos are more connected. They have more friends. They're more likely to volunteer. They're more involved in the community.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people, perhaps people who are watching right now, they're comfortable being alone, but suddenly they're actually feeling a lot less connected than they would normally be.
Definitely. And I have to say, in the last 2 years of being pretty consciously single, my friendships have flourished and thrived because otherwise you're fully alone. There's nothing else. And it's very easy to just lean on your partner when you are with someone, but it's not healthy. It's not well-rounded. Like, you need other people to balance out all these other interests you have. And even just that idea that your partner should be able to hit every point of all the things you're interested in is ridiculous and really setting people up to fail.
I agree. This idea that this one person has to be everything is a pretty tall order. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, and so, you know, there's a little bit of a tendency to sort of envy folks who have a partner at this moment. All I want to say is I'm ready for the following to happen. I'm ready for the surge in births from the couples that are doing well. Yeah. And I'm ready for the surge in divorces. Yes. Because there's no hiding from your problems during the next few weeks.
Right. You're either going to fight it out or you're going to fuck it out.
Yes, exactly. Well said.
And you get to choose.
So I want to ask you, Gala, I have a couple like areas that I want us to cover, because sure. I want this to be inspirational. I want people to walk away with this with a little bit of an action plan that they'll be better off, mm-hmm. not just tomorrow, but they might be better off 2 years from now. I think that there's two things that are at work, which is what's happening in the immediacy that I can do to be better. And then, you know, there's this saying by Confucius that I like, which is, we live two lives. The second one begins when we realize we're living one life, mm-hmm. or something like that. We have one life is basically it. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to start thinking about a second chapter in their life.
I think so too.
Yes. All right, so let's talk about some special considerations for the sequestered solo. Okay. Right now. And so I want to ask you, what have you been doing, and what advice have you been giving to people in your predicament, in my predicament?
Well, you know, I am aware that, you know, me and you and a lot of the people watching are in a really fortunate position where we can work from home. Our lives haven't really been affected that much. And so if you're in that group of people where you have the opportunity to stay at home and you have a thermostat and there's food in the fridge and you got fucking Netflix rolling 24/7, then this is a time to take advantage of that. And there are so many things that we make excuses around, that we don't have time to do, that we, you know, can't, you know, muster up the energy for. And this is an amazing opportunity to work on your creative projects, to finally organize your closet, to take up something, learn a language. Like, we don't know how long we have. It's very unusual. It's sort of like being on a spaceship in orbit and we're like, I don't know, I'm just here for a while. And there's so much we can do with this time. So if we're fortunate enough to be at home and be relatively safe, then let's not squander this opportunity. We may not ever see it again. So the things that I've been doing, I've been working on my new book, which has been really exciting. And I'm actually feeling more inspired than ever, maybe because I have so much downtime to really think about what's going on so I can work on it more thoroughly. I have been working out in my living room. Mm-hmm.
I saw your Instagram post with your pistols, your chair pistols.
Yep. I did so well with those today, and I worked out this morning and I felt amazing afterwards. I'm talking to my friends. I'm probably having an average of 4 or 5 phone calls a day and maybe an Instagram live, and it's a super connected time for me. But the thing that I've really been focusing on is how I can be of service to other people. It'd be really easy to sit around and think, oh, poor fucking me. I wish I could go to the gym and go shopping. And like, yeah, sure, I always wish that. But getting irritated about it doesn't serve me. And what really helps me is to think about how I can help other people who may be anxious, who may be scared, who may be fearful, and to use the tools I have to help them. That's really what I've been focusing on, and it's been making me feel incredible. That's
fantastic. So I want to touch on two of the things, because I have a list myself that I made. Yeah. And you've addressed 2 of them. So one is, I like the saying of solo but not alone. And I like that you're sort of dusting off the phone, right? So the phone call is a lost art.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to hear you making calls. I've talked to other single people who are doing Google Hangouts, mm-hmm. with their friends. They're doing kind of happy hours where they pour themselves a glass of wine and then have 2, 3, 4 people on a Google Hangout call or a Zoom call or a Facebook, whatever the Facebook stuff is. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. And so I like that idea. And one thing that I just did the other night was I just sent out a bunch of text messages that just says, how you're doing, how are you doing? Just because you're solo doesn't mean you're alone, and I just got back lots and lots of responses, just reminding people that you're there for them if they need
Yes,
it.
absolutely. And that's a really important thing to be doing. And ideally should be doing that kind of thing all the time, checking in with our friends and being the kind of friends that we hope that we have in our lives.
Yes, I think that's great. The other one is I like that you're working out. So obviously I know that this is something that's really important for you. And so, yes, your circumstances changed, but the things that are important shouldn't change.
Yeah.
And so it just takes a little bit more creativity. And so one of the things that I want to really encourage people to do is you can go for a walk.
Yeah.
You can find a nice grassy spot and I call it my prison workout. So I did my prison workout today. I only needed like a 9x6 space to do some burpees and air squats and push-ups on a timer. And so, so I think that idea of making sure that you're taking care, I call it the tripod. So it's exercise, sleep, and eating. Yeah. And I feel like if I can take care of those things, and by the way, when the shit goes down, the tripod becomes more important, not less important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? So no alcohol, leaning into fresh fruits, vegetables. By the way, they are available in the supermarkets. There's not a food shortage.
Yeah.
They take a little more time to prepare, and then also making sure I'm trying to get a little bit extra sleep, in part because I think a lot of people's sleep is disrupted because of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to hear you lead with connecting with others and taking care of your health and well-being.
Yeah, I think the sleep thing is a really important point because we're getting so much information all day, every day right now. I don't think our brains are really capable of processing it. Like, you will need to take naps.
Yes.
And then you also will have times where you feel wired and you can't. I didn't go to sleep till 1:30 last night and I wasn't even tired. I was just like buzzing with stuff. I wasn't anxious. I was just pumped. So to sort of understand that there are going to be variations in your sleep and how much you want, and just to go with the flow, like actually listen to your body. We say this all the time. Are we actually doing it? Not that often.
I had an interesting experience. I've been eating really, really well lately. And yesterday I did a podcast. I stopped into a taco shop and I ended up having a burrito just because I needed a little bit of comfort food. Yeah. And I just remember just how awful I felt after eating that big ass burrito. I was like, oh, maybe all this, this processed tortilla and all this stuff, maybe not the best thing for me. Mm-hmm. I've been leaning back into my salads today. Yes. I want to talk about that idea of buzzing, because I think that, and it's somewhat ironic that we're doing this on a buzzing platform, an Instagram Live. But have you been taking any electronic breaks as a result of this?
I haven't really, and would probably benefit me.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that I had on my list as I was thinking this through, is you don't have to watch the news 24/7. Right. There's not that much that's happening. It's a lot of conjecture. It's a lot of reporting about stuff that's happening in other places. Mm-hmm. And so finding some moments of quiet, to just be away from it all. Yeah. And instead of looking like this at a screen all the time, is going to help your posture. Yes. And it's going to help your heart and your soul. And so I think having a little bit of an electronic break is probably another thing.
Yeah, I think 2 days ago I read an article that sort of threw me into a bit of a spiral. And after that, I realized I need to not be looking at articles and stuff. And there was a time, the first few days, I was really refreshing CNN.com, maybe 20 times a day to see what was going on. Yes. And I've radically cut it back. I maybe looked at it 3 or 4 times today. And that makes a huge difference.
Hey, Steven, one of my buddies actually just popped up there. We have a man in the feed. Look
Woo! Hi, Steven.
So I have to admit, I am on the more positive side when it comes to, at least when it comes to the virus. I'm concerned, obviously, about the economic effects of this and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm not naturally an optimist. I actually think that in the long run, a lot of people are going to be better off as a result of this.
Yes.
But I don't watch much of the news, and that's part of the reason that I think it helps me feel this way. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, from a sort of health and well-being standpoint, do you have any other tips, ideas, either things that you're doing or things that you think that the listeners should be considering?
I think I want to actually go back to your point about food, because I think that's so vital. And something that I did probably a couple of months ago, I invested in this smart oven called Tovala. And basically it cooks your food for you. It's so amazing. You scan the QR code and it perfectly cooks whatever you put in there. It's absolutely amazing. But they deliver me gluten-free meals every week. And they're based in Illinois, but because they're a restaurant that's like takeout essentially, they're not closed down, so they're still delivering food. And so I'm getting 10 meals a week from them. And I think anything that you can do to automate your life where you don't have to make a choice about something that ultimately is pretty trivial will really help you and make you less anxious. It's much easier to live your life when there's a lot of uncertainty, when you can just open the fridge and you're like, oh, I'll eat that one. And you don't have to think like, what am I going to put this with? What do I feel like? I don't know. I've just got like 6 options in there right now, and I just choose what I want and I heat it and go.
I think that's nice. One of the things that I've noticed both with other people and myself is, like, I think I find myself a little bit shorter tempered when things aren't going quite right. You know, things have been really disrupted. Mm-hmm. I'm also finding that people are making a lot of errors. There's a lot of people sort of working distracted. Which has, you know, of course, now with me being a little more short-tempered and them making errors, it's not a good combination.
Yes.
And so when you can limit your decisions, now you're limiting the energy that you're spending on things that don't matter that much.
Right.
I certainly would say this. I'm going to add mine to you. That's great that you're getting good, healthy food delivered to you. Mm-hmm. There's an alternative to this, which is getting rid of the shitty food, the highly processed, crappy food, the chips and all that kind of stuff that is just so tempting when it's there, you know. Let me add one, like this one might be a little bit surprising to people.
Okay.
I think we should make sure we continue to groom ourselves well. Mm-hmm. Like, I think just because you're home doesn't mean that you have to just let yourself go.
I mean, I'm in full regalia today.
I know, I'm impressed. I had no doubt you would be. But like, I'm not sure if you typically shave every day as a guy, I'm not sure you should stop shaving unless you want to try to have a beard. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I think that there's a little bit of this idea of, I don't want to call it professionalism, but there's a little bit of like, I'm not giving up just because there's something in my way.
Yeah, I think it's very important to, like, you know, when I started working from home and I had my blog and all of those things, I remember my mother saying to me, like, hey, even though you're working from home, don't just wake up in your pajamas and then wander to the laptop and work like that. She was always a huge proponent of wake up, shower, you know, make yourself look as good as possible, put on an actual outfit and then sit down to work. And it makes such a huge difference. It's the difference between, you know, walking into a meeting looking really good and walking into a meeting with like stains on your clothing. Like, it's just going to affect your performance no matter whether you think it is or not.
So Miss Megxix G says she's going to dress up a little today. I think that's great.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, it will make you feel so good, I promise. And in case you're interested, like, every clothing company is still shipping, and because no one's really buying, it's all like 80% off. So if you do feel like indulging in a little retail therapy, I think you should.
That's funny. I'm going to add one more, and then I want to see if you have any others for health and well-being before we turn into a different topic.
Yeah.
I want to encourage people so I think you're right. I think that creative types are actually thriving at the moment.
Yeah.
Because they have more time to work on their creative work. And I actually think this sort of disruption allows you to start to think differently, and that's really benefits creatives.
Yes.
And so I have a saying, a sort of principle for solo, which is create more than you consume. And so the average person consumes way more content than they ever make.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity for people to start to create. Now, creating could be rather, a broad thing. It could be something as simple as like starting to journal. Mm-hmm. Like, I think journaling during this time is going to be very valuable as a way to get a hold of how you're feeling, but then also to look back on it 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, to remember what was going on that's there. But creating could be making meals, creating can be scrapbooking, there's a lot of ways that, that people can go about creating, but there is something that's beautiful about creation that is nice, which is it can create a pleasant feeling. Your attention can lock down and time can sort of evaporate.
Yes. And these days can seem very long if you're not creating anything.
Yes.
Very long. Like a day can feel like a week at the moment because you're not leaving unless you're going for a walk or something. But what I wanted to say about creativity and how creatives are thriving, I think the best creatives are the people who are inherently flexible. And this situation is creating enough chaos. It's like there's enough grist in the mill to really like push something out. There's a lot of input, there's a lot of ideas. And so if you can be flexible right now and put whatever you're feeling into something tangible or something that makes you feel good to make, then you're going to feel so much better at the end of this.
Indeed. Yeah. Last night I turned everything off and I just journaled for about 45 minutes or an hour. Mm-hmm. And and then I went to bed, you know what I mean? And it just helped sort of clear my mind. I had a bunch of cool ideas. Actually, that's where some of the things that I am talking about now came from as I had a moment to reflect. Yeah. Any other ideas in terms of health and well-being that comes to mind before we move on to the next topic?
Health and well-being, the final thing I will say, I'm actually going to make a video about this to put on my stories, is if you're having things delivered to you, to just be careful about what you do with those packages. So here is my regimen. I have a box of disposable latex gloves that I bought ages ago for dyeing my hair. So if Amazon knocks on the door, or Whole Foods, whoever, I open the door with my gloves on. I go out with my Clorox wipes. I wipe down the packaging or like whatever. No, I don't wipe down the packaging. I open the packaging and then I take out the item. I wipe it down with Clorox wipes. And then I leave the packaging outside. I put the gloves with it and I put that on the curb and then I bring the item inside my house. Because what we are learning is that the virus can live on cardboard, it can live on plastic, it can live on metal. So if there's anything that you're buying or bringing into your home, you want to make sure it's clean before you bring it in. So clean your shit before you bring it inside. That's all.
You're way more hardcore than you're gonna live. I'm gonna die. I think that's what we've just established.
It's so funny because I keep thinking about people who really struggle with OCD, and I bet they're all just like, we were right. Really, we were fucking right.
This is a perfect segue into the next topic, which is engineering your space.
Okay.
Creating your context. So there's a lot of people who are suddenly spending a lot more time at home than they might otherwise, and they might be spending a lot more time with other people than they would otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are in terms of making your home a little more comfortable, a little bit better for this unusual time.
Well, I think it's important to have a space that you can call your own, even if it's like you get to close the door to the bathroom and you sit in the tub and that's where you work. Maybe the tub's not even full of water. It's just the place that you go and no one can come in. But having a space that feels like your own, where you can sort of block other people out, is going to be important. If you've got noise canceling headphones, charge them up. And this is really a time where we have to get comfortable asking for what we want and feeling good about what we want. So if it's, hey, can you please be quiet for 30 minutes? I need to lie down and take a nap and I don't want to hear anything. Then we need to be capable of asking for those things. And this practice of asking for what we want is a muscle. It's never easy to do in the beginning, but the more we do it, the more fluent we become in that language. So it's really, really important to ask for what you want right now.
Yeah, I mean, asking for what you want is an act of courage.
Yeah.
Right? It's actually creating a moment of vulnerability because you risk not getting what you want. But if you don't ask, you never get.
Exactly.
So Julie Nervelli says, I've been lighting a candle every day. That actually relates to one of the ones that I like which is I don't think you can see them in the background, but I have fresh flowers. So there's plenty of fresh flowers at the supermarket also. No toilet paper, but tons of fresh flowers.
Wipe your ass with rose petals. It's very romantic.
And so I regularly always have a bouquet of flowers that I buy for myself. And so I think that there's no reason for me to stop that. Actually, it becomes even more important. And so I think there's some like little things that you can do to just make your space a little more like making sure the shades are open and not being afraid to crack a window and letting some fresh air in, and just making the space a little bit more comfortable. But even more important than that, I'm making, as a slightly OCD person, I'm going to make a request that it's time. I know it's not April yet. It's not spring quite yet. It's time for some spring cleaning. And so why not use this time to tidy up your space?
Yes.
In particular, because the economic effects of this are going to be profound. And there's going to be people who need the shit that you do not wear anymore and that you do not use. So it's time to clean out that garage. It's time to clean out that wardrobe and so on. And so I think that that's a really important thing, which is that's hard for people to do, but figuring out a way to tidy up your space, to throw out the junk, to recycle, to find other uses of things. And you'd be surprised, that's going to pass some time. And one of the nice things about it is that's an act of creation.
Yes.
You've now created a much nicer, there's such a sense of accomplishment that comes from like something as simple as I'm going to organize this rat's nest of wires behind my TV.
Right.
Right, And so
people might not even see that, but you did it and it makes you feel good.
Yeah, murdering some dust bunnies is a really nice activity for safer at home.
Even just silly little things like just making sure the dishes are done every day makes such a difference as well. It's all those little things that kind of add up and crowd your mind, all that like mess or just things everywhere, stacks of books, like put that shit away.
Yes. What's the saying? Messy bed, messy head.
Yes.
I actually have this thing. So I'm blessed in the world. I never get depressed, and I actually rarely get angry, but what I do get is anxious. And one of the things that happens is this, anxiety is the successful person's disease. So if you're anxious, folks, know that it's working for you in some ways.
Yes.
But sometimes, when I just feel a little bit overwhelmed, what I end up doing is I tidy up, I make my to-do list. I just get everything organized, and it just gives me a little bit, in a world where we feel like we don't have very much control right now, at least it gives me some control over my space. Yeah. And so I think, someone's washing their dishes as she listens right now. Nice. And I think that's great. Yeah. And I think one of the other things that's really nice, so when you think about it, is like you get control of your environment, you're now creating rather than consuming, and then the last thing is, when you're done, you actually have things that you can give to people who need them more than you. Yes. And oh, by the way, if you have others, what a great group activity where you can divide and conquer. Yes. And frankly, you need those other people probably to let you know that you need to get rid of those pants or that old green sweatshirt. You know what I mean? Right? That you love, but no one else wants to see you in.
And that having been said, if you are like Peter or I and you're living alone, make your friends be the hit squad on FaceTime and say, does this stay or does this go?
Yes, that's right. So any other ideas?
Do you want this?
Yes, that's great. I like that idea. Yeah, it can be a virtual wardrobe scrub. I would
Right.
say.
Right.
Yeah. As a quick aside, I like to say, if you haven't worn it in a year, it's pretty safe to get rid of. You know, pretty safe.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, any other ideas that you have about engineering or trying to work with your space as you're sequestered?
I think, like you're saying, making your to-do list and being really clear about what you're doing is important. I've been making my to-do list every day and adding things to my Google Calendar.
Yes.
It's interesting. I feel like I've actually been busier during this time than I have been in a long time because there are so many people I can help and so many Instagram lives I can do and so many projects I want to kick off. So that feels really good. And the other thing I would say, just in terms of, like, I love your tip about buying flowers. I think that's divine. And I also think it's really nice to use essential oils in your home. A lot of them are antibacterial, eucalyptus, tea tree, lavender, and they smell so good. So, you can use them on your hands. You can use them to wipe down surfaces, and it will just make your home smell really good. It might smell better than Clorox. Like, use your Clorox, but then go over it with something that smells really nice.
I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah. Gala, I'm not surprised that you're busier than ever. Not at all.
I mean, I just feel like if you have the right perspective, you can turn anything into a fantastic opportunity for yourself.
I swear I have not fed her these questions because that's a perfect segue into my next thing. So I want to talk to you about more professional topics.
Okay.
Because I think this is my prediction. So one of the things that's very clear from the behavioral sciences is that when things are going well, you are not motivated to make change.
Yeah.
But when things are going poorly, that's when people want to make change. And as a result, I think a lot of people are going to start thinking very hard, not just about their relationships, as we alluded to earlier, but just about, like, imagine you work in an office park. And every day you do a long commute to the office park. You spend your 9 hours there and you do your long commute back. And now you can't do that. At the end of this, maybe you're excited to go back to the office park. But what if you're not? And I think, as I was saying with that Confucius quote, there's a lot of people who now have some time to actually stop and go, is this the life that I wanted? Is this the life, like, if it ended now because of this stupid ass virus, would I be satisfied with the life? And so solo to me is about, as I said, seeking a remarkable life, and I use the word remarkable for a reason, which is it's a life that people talk about.
Right.
People remark about your life.
The literal definition of remarkable.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, the thing about going to that office park is if you are now being given permission by your boss, I don't even believe in that word. That's how fucking rebellious I am. But if your boss has now told you can work from home, why the fuck would you ever go back to that office park?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an office park per se. It could be the idea that you don't want a boss. It is the fact that you wanted to do something more impactful. You want to do something more creative. Yeah. You wanted to start, you've always wanted to start a business. And so let's just assume, Gala, that the average listener wants to make some professional change. Yeah. Or personal change, for that matter, that's more profound than just tidying up their space, cleaning out their closet, making sure they go for a walk. How do you think they should approach that? What do you think they should be thinking about?
I think it's important I don't really believe in this idea of life purpose. I think your purpose is whatever you decide it is, and whatever you put your energy into, that's your life purpose. And I think this is a time where we're seeing so many people struggle and suffer and be in pain and fear. And so if you're at a loose end or you're not sure and you want to do something different, what if you just ask people what you could help them with right now? And even if you have no idea what that could lead to, that may give you some clues as to where you're strong and what your zone of genius is and what comes naturally to you. And that could be an amazing springboard for the next project that you take on or the transition that you go through. But I really think this coronavirus is kind of like the equivalent of us hitting rock bottom. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom for things to change, like you were saying. And we're now seeing, I feel like I've said this on every Instagram live I've done this week, we are realizing these structures and these systems do not fucking work. They do not serve us. and that they can be changed so quickly if we all decide that they no longer work.
Yes. One of the wild things about being in Los Angeles right now is the lack of traffic.
Yeah.
And what I like is I live a life where I never have to deal with traffic. And so, my life is better because of subtraction. I've subtracted traffic from my life.
Yeah.
So I think I like that idea of just paying attention to what you're sort of naturally drawn to, what you're good at, what you get positive feedback for. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna revisit. I'm gonna mention two things here. One is it might be time to get a therapist. Mm. And so I think that the average person benefits. I think the average solo should have a team, and I think a therapist is likely a good team member for the average person.
Yeah.
And I think that starting that process of looking for a therapist, I have an episode of Solo that's forthcoming about how to find a therapist.
Amazing.
And so that's sort of a long run game, because you can't just quick find someone who's good for you. It's a lot like online dating. It takes a little while to find this good match.
Right.
But the other one is so I've been busier than ever. I have a book coming out called Stick to Business. Mm-hmm. And in it, I talk about the power of writing. I have a chapter called Write It or Regret It. And so in the book, it's essentially serious business lessons from the masters of comedy. And I talk about how comedians are great at writing things down. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the foundation for much of their practice. And so one of the things that I encourage people to do when they're thinking about a project, you mentioned your next project, I encourage them to write a one-pager. That is to write down what the project is, who it serves, what it's going to be like, why you're doing it, mm-hmm. why it stands out, on just one single sheet of paper. And then, what ends up happening is, like, for example, the Solo came as a result of a one-pager that I wrote over the course of about 2 weeks in the evening, me sitting on my couch.
Yeah.
And what happened was, at the end, I was like, I think this is pretty good. And so then I gave it to a dozen people, and they were like, this is really good. And so it turns from this sort of tool of recording your ideas and clarifying, and then it becomes a tool. And some of the copy that I've written, some of the intro that I use, is pulled directly from that original one-pager
right.
that's there. And so, so if you're thinking about making a change in life, that one-pager can be a great place to start. By the way, most one-pagers I write, I end up never doing anything with them. Right? Because at the end I go, not so strong an idea,
right.
But better to figure out early than to start to execute it.
Definitely. And we all have great ideas all the time, right? But they shouldn't all be executed. So that's a really good way of figuring out what we should act on and what we should just enjoy in the moment, and then be like, I'm good. I don't really need to do that.
Yes. And then, beyond that, I think that you don't have to do that much beyond the one-pager. Like, no, you don't need 30-page business plans anymore. You need something right. short. You need to write it down because you need to be clear about it. And then what you want to do is make something. Make it and put it out into the world. It's like, do people respond positively? Do they respond negatively? Do they give you feedback? Then you just right. take your, this is the lean startup idea.
Yeah. But it's imperative to test it as soon as possible. And so many people spend forever developing an idea and coming up with the this and the that and the who's going to invest in blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, test if people want it first.
Yes, I agree.
Start super small, but you got to get something out into the world. It's very important.
That's indeed. Now, for those listeners who are not, they don't want to be an entrepreneur. They're not deeply creative like you are, Gala. Maybe they're not a live to work kind of person. They're more of a work to live kind of person. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they may lean more heavily on an organization. A corporation, the government, a university, whatever that might be. What advice do you have for them as they're starting to contemplate trying to make that kind of 9-to-5, more traditional life better going back?
I think, there's several things you can ask. I mean, if you are working for a big company or you're working in the government or you're working in a university or attending, what if you just did some brainstorming on how could this organization run more effectively so that everybody would be served? What are your ideas on that? We think that things have to be the same all the time because they've always been done this way. We clearly know that's not the truth. So what improvements could be made? And things change all the time, but it takes someone to actually sit down and think about it and then have the courage to say, hey, I had this idea. Do you mind if we talk about it? And then I think also just in your personal life, asking yourself, where are the areas where I don't feel fulfilled right now? Is it your relationships? Is it your health? Is it, your personal confidence? And then what can you do about that? And even just picking one area and making little refinements all the time just makes such a huge difference. But I think people are really coming to terms with their lives right now. We're sitting alone in our homes and we can't escape from our thoughts really anymore. There's only so much Netflix and so many donuts you can eat to stuff it all down. Eventually that shit is going to surface.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to add one to yours. I like that idea. I'm going to add one is what can you remove that's making you unhappy at
You
work?
love the subtraction, huh? That's your shit. You love to take away.
I love to take away. Everybody wants to solve problems by adding things.
Right.
But most people have time problems, regardless, like for the lucky people in the world who don't have money problems, they still have time problems. So everybody has time problems. And so what can you take away that's going to add value? So is that keeping yourself away from a toxic worker? Mm-hmm. Is that finding a way to work at home more so you have less of that horrible commute? Is that having fewer meetings at work? And, and having those hard questions, which is like, or hard conversations, which is like, why, one of the things that I hate is the hour-long meeting, right? Why does a meeting have to be an hour? Right? I mean, it's like the meeting should be as long as it needs to be to get to where it, to get to the point you've done. And so what's the saying is like, most hour-long meetings could be a half hour. Most half-hour meetings could be a conversation in the hallway. Most conversations in the hallway could be an email, right?
Yeah.
And most emails could be deleted. So I like that a lot. So I'm curious about your book writing process. So I want to wrap this up by talking a little bit. So when we met, you were just hustling on this book. This was a book about relationships, yes? And so, so you're writing a book about relationships. I'm writing a book about anti-relationships. And so, or not book, but I have a podcast about it. And so, I'm curious, how has what's been unfolding, is it affecting your writing? Is it affecting your perspective? Have you having any changes?
Well, it's very interesting because at the start of the year, I told myself I would go on 100 dates to basically support giving me enough material for this book and giving me plenty of stuff to pull from. And I think I'm at maybe like 25 dates or something, but now obviously it's like ground to a halt.
Right.
However, that doesn't mean that I won't maybe do FaceTime dates or phone dates or something. And I think I was saying this to you on the phone earlier, there's so much potential for online dating to really flourish because it's not going to be a quick hookup. That's clearly not on the cards. I mean, some men, I suppose, will want to have like FaceTime sex, but women who haven't met them will probably not be interested in that unless they get super desperate.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of room for courtship and actually getting to know people and learning how people react and behave in a crisis, which is actually one of the most important things you should know about someone. And just knowing their constitution generally. Are you an optimist or a pessimist? Do you look for solutions or do you complain about shit? Like, I can't be around those people. So, it's a really good way of separating everything and getting really clear on what's going on.
I think that's great. I do agree with you. People reveal who they are when things are bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
About that. Well, Gala, as I said in my response to your very kind I don't want to have sex with you text message. I said that you are exactly the kind of person that I moved to Los Angeles to meet and to befriend. And this is demonstrated, I think, very clearly by your willingness to say yes to this bit of an experiment here today, by the thoughtful ideas that you've presented to both the listeners and to the people who read the podcast later. And then just, I think in general, just being an inspiration in terms of someone who takes care of their mind, body, and soul. And I think that that's really wonderful. And so I wanted to say, I really appreciate you, and I thank you for your time and for doing this.
Thank you so much. This was really fun, and I hope that everyone watching and listening later on really found this valuable and helpful. I think, you know, it's tempting to feel like we're alone right now, but this is like the greatest free retreat you've ever been on. The amount of Instagram lives and great things that are happening online, there's so much available to you. So please take advantage of it and don't ever feel that you're alone. You're really not. We're all in this together.
Yes. All right. Well, that's great. So look for this on Solo, The Single Person's Guide to a Remarkable Life. And then obviously, Gala
listen, it's great.
Gala can be found everywhere. And thanks everyone for listening and for commenting. Cheers.